Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yes. Okay. Okie dokie. Well, well. All right. Good morning. Welcome today. And for something a little different today, I will do it in English. Um, thank you for your comments on the midterm evaluation. Um, you know, I'm considering everything we've been going through, the fact that we even can function at all is fine. I just, so I appreciate, thanks for the comments. I might look at them a little bit more at the end of our talk here. One of the comments, or at least maybe two comments, were, hey, thanks for the Danish, but not so much. So I'll take a break. You can take a break. I'll do it in English today. Um, but I'm getting better, I think. But I'll do it in English today, and we'll provide a little variety, a little balance to this adventure. So we have just a very short presentation today. Maybe I don't know, 45 minutes, an hour's worth of slides, I think, maybe. And then we'll take a coffee break, and then I'll open it up for people to share your screen, and you can talk about your project and ask questions, ask for advice, ask for guidance in what you're doing. And so I can give you a nice push off into the Posca holiday here, and get us going in a good direction as we round the bend into the end of the semester already. It's always like that, it's always like that. It doesn't matter what the calendar says. Spring semester, once we hit Posca, it's just a race for the finish line. It's just the horses are going, and you better have your bets down, because it's coming up quick. And and that's the way it is, right? I mean, we're all relaxed and having our lecture now, and then we'll come back from Posca, and suddenly it'll be, semester's over. Thank you very much. So far, I cross my fingers. You guys don't know how lucky you are. We have actually been able to mostly actually stay with our course plan. That's a miracle, really. It's just a miracle. The other course I'm teaching, it didn't happen. It's just a complete Keystone Cops, which is a term you don't know, which is a very old term that probably only someone my age or older knows what it means. But complete Keystone Cops. Google it. So I just gave up on any kind of logic or structure in that course. That's just not. No, we're just going to be glad it's over. we're doing pretty good. And believe it or not, I think we're going to be able to hold to the schedule after POSCA too. The schedule says after POSCA, we got to have a visit to DSB. So we're not going physically to DSB. Yeah, not going to happen. But they're going to join us on Zoom, and they're going to give their presentation on Zoom, or he, one person, in this case. So we're doing pretty good. I think we're doing pretty good. So anyway, enough talk. Let's jump into these slides right here and have a little talk about intelligent transport systems. It's not necessarily the broadest presentation on intelligent transport systems. There's probably a lot of stuff that we could talk about that's not in this presentation. But I know just enough to be dangerous. Just enough to be dangerous. I'm not an expert in this area, so I'm kind of dependent on material I get from other people. I know enough, just enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be an authority to really tell you all exactly the details. How does it relate to your project? Maybe not so much. I don't know. It could, maybe, could. If you happen to discover some news articles or some material about the transport system that you are studying, and it says, hey, look at us. We're so great. Look at this high-tech communication system we have, or look at this super special dispatch system or planning system that we have. And look how great it makes our, maybe, so don't say no. But I'm not holding my breath either, so maybe you find something about this for your project, maybe not, it's okay. So at least leave that open. But anyway, mostly in this presentation, we're really going to be focused pretty much actually on just one topic, and that's this idea of better control of bus traffic, better control of bus movement, which is important. It's pretty high up there. It's one of the most significant challenges that transport systems have in producing a quality product that people can really use. So it is important. It is important, but there's plenty of other things for intelligent transport systems under that broad category. So anyway, let's go in and start working through these slides here. So bus bunching. So English term, obviously, they're bunching. It's a bunch. It's a bunch of buses. It's a bunch. It's a collection. They're squished together. It's a bunch of flowers, a bunch of asparagus, they're pushed together, and it's not great. And it can happen on rail systems too. It can happen on rail systems too. The best example I can give you, maybe I don't know if I said this before, but the best example I can give you is San Francisco rail services, San Francisco cable cars, but also San Francisco streetcars or Sporvagn. And the causes and the reasons are exactly the same as for buses. And so it's really not about buses so much as it is about a particular kind of transport service that functions like a bus. And what are those qualities? I can just tell you off the top of my head. Here's what it is. A transport service that has a high degree of variance, high degree of deviation in the travel times. And the most obvious reason for that with buses is road traffic. So you have a high degree of variation in the road traffic because you're driving this bus and there's street traffic, and the bus is doing just great, and then suddenly, oh my gosh, there's a trash truck. There's a big trash truck, and it's going slow, and it's blocking the street, and it's picking up the trash cans. And now you're driving this bus on a narrow street behind a trash truck and you can't, stuff like that, right? I mean, you're stuck behind some other vehicle. And in narrow streets in cities like San Francisco and New York City and London, you can have things, you can have delivery trucks that just park, stop with their flashers on right in the middle of the street. And they stop and they're stopping to unload. And then all the traffic has to squeeze around that truck in some attempt to get around it. And that's very common, very common. Not so common in Copenhagen. I don't see that so much, not too much, a little bit, not so much in Copenhagen. We're too good for that. We're too good for that here. We have much better control, much better social responsibility. So that doesn't happen here so much. But some other factors, so traffic is one. Another factor is ticket sales. Ticket sales on board the vehicle. Ticket sales on board the vehicle. Huge time consumer. Huge time consumer. And when you have ticket sales by the driver. So in the old days, vehicles had two employees. You had a driver and you had a ticket seller. You had a conductor in English. You had a conductor, and the conductor managed ticket sales and managed all these things. And people just jump on the bus, and the driver starts to drive, and the conductor takes care of the ticket sales and all this stuff after the bus is moving. Well, we don't have that anymore. It's too expensive. So now the driver has to sell tickets, and man, does that slow the bus down. It's a huge, whoa. I mean, that, and I see it in the United Kingdom. I see it in the UK as well when I ride buses there. And it's really archaic when you think about it. This idea of a bus with 70 people on board, and the whole thing is stop still because bus driver's up there in the front going, yeah, you want a ticket to where? Okay, yeah, and that's going to be £1.20. Oh yeah, give me that coin. And there's a lot of discussion also here in Denmark about, should we stop selling tickets on board the bus? Because it is a time consumer. So that increases delays. That has a function in delays. And then, of course, the physical structure, the physical design of the vehicle, and the width of the door, and how do you get up into the vehicle, and how long does that take? And by definition, nearly all buses have steps, and you have to climb up the steps to get into the bus, and you have narrower doors, and now you got older customers and customers with little kids, and you got people with barnvogn and all this kind of stuff. And so that adds to the delays too. So you put all this together, and in the next few slides, I'll show you how that can really disrupt things. So let's go on here. And I got a fun, stay tuned. Don't you go to sleep out there. Stay tuned, because we got a fun little video. We got a fun little simulation that I can run on the screen that I think is kind of fun. And you can try it at home too. So here we go. So, of course, you're waiting for the bus, and waiting, and no bus comes, and then multiple buses come. And this is very common. This happens everywhere. And, I gave the example of the San Francisco cable cars. San Francisco cable cars got plenty of different things that can mess up their day and delay things. They're old technology. They're running in the middle of the street. They can be easily delayed by badly parked cars or delivery trucks or all kinds of stuff. And then they're just full of tourists, and the tourists have no clue what they're doing. They've never been on this thing before. So every stop is just a giant, exhibition again, where the crew on the cable car has to tell the tourists what to do, and has to say, you look, stand over there. And yes, I need $5 for the fare. And yes, it goes to Fisherman's Wharf, and all this kind of stuff. And that, it makes it very slow and irregular. And it's very common to be standing at the street corner waiting for a San Francisco cable car and wait a half an hour. And then 3 of these things come rolling right past you at the same time for the very same reason we're going to see here. So, so let's talk a little bit more. Yeah, we could have this little pause. I'm not enjoying the Zoom technology for any kind. I miss this. It's not so much fun to have these little group discussions. I've pretty much already said on Zoom, it's harder. It's hard. I miss the ability to walk around the classroom and poke you. I like that. I like being able to walk around the classroom and say, hey, you, what are you doing? Talk to me. Can't quite do that now. I can't quite reach out into that screen and grab you right now. But anyway, I already kind of said all the answers to this, so let's skip this one. But we got some stuff we can do a little bit later. So I already gave you the answers to that basically. And here we go. Some of these answers. Traffic signals, passengers, different things like that, and it really messes up. It really messes up traffic here. So let's go on to the next slide. And here's the basic examples. You can see this in a mathematical text, in a diagram, in a figure here. Oh, I can see we got our fun entertainment coming up on the next slide. I can see it on my screen here. Hold on, it's gonna be good. You can see it right here. You have some crazy delay. You can see it in the figure. Too many passengers, somebody who doesn't have the correct change for the bus ticket, somebody who gets on the bus to buy a ticket, and then they talk to the driver, and then the driver says, no, this bus doesn't go there. And then they get off the bus again. And so stuff like that, right? And it just slows everything down. You wouldn't see that on the S-Bahn, right? I mean, you wouldn't see that, right? How many times have you seen, you've never seen somebody on the S-Bahn, a passenger walk up to the front of the train and knock on the window and then say to the driver, hey, does this train go to the airport? You don't see that, right? It doesn't happen, but you do see it on a bus. You do see it on a bus. Yeah, too.
That totally happens on the S train also all the time.
Oh, really? I've never seen it. I've
driven for 4 years and it happens all the time.
Seen it? I mean, it's not quite so common, right? I mean, but I mean, okay, so it happens. All right. I'm trying to think. But imagine that a whole train full of like 200 people, and then like somebody having a little talk with the driver. I know. I mean, sometimes you do have to talk to the driver. For example, on the Hillero line, obviously, I know this from conversation, and you probably know this too. And thank you for jumping in there, by the way, guys. That's okay. Thank you. Like when they need to have the train, when the military guys need the train to stop at Huilta, they go up to the driver and say, hey, you, I need to get off at Huilta, so please remember that. And so that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, sometimes you do talk to the driver, but it's not the same, right? It's not quite the same. And I'm not clear how patient the driver would be. The driver might say, I'm too busy, I gotta go, I'm not talking to you, goodbye. I'm not sure how long the driver will hold that window open and engage in a conversation with you. But a bus driver, in very many cases, will have to stick it out for a little while. So anyway, so you got this is, you can understand this diagram. Let's go on. So here's the fun part. Let's do this. Let me open this up. And let's hope it works. Yes, and I got to switch screens, I think. Or no, you do have this. I think you have, well, I'm going to make sure can you see this now? Or are you still seeing the slide presentation?
Let's see it.
You can see it. All right. So here's a cute little simulation. So you have these 2 buses circulating around this loop here, and then they're making stops to pick up and drop passengers here. And And over here on the lower left, so you have the buses, and there's a running number that says how many people are on board the bus. How many people are on board the bus? And so passengers getting off and passengers getting on. And so the fun part is, and then the fun part is that I can go down here and put my mouse on one of the buses and just hold the mouse down, and it will cause that bus to pause. It'll cause that bus to stop. And just to simulate this idea of traffic or somebody's on the bus talking or something like that. So I just hold my mouse down, click, whoop, bus is delayed, and I let go. And wow, suddenly look at that. Now the bus has this huge load of passengers, and you can see in the simulation, now we have bus bunching, right? Now we have these two buses chasing after each other, and the bus that's chasing, bus number one, has got no passengers on board. So it's just an empty bus chasing after the first bus. And it's just a very simple simulation, but it's exactly the problem. And the rest of this presentation, at least the next half of this presentation, is all about how do we fix this. And I'm sorry if I'm spoiling the movie for you, but the answer is it's really hard and you're not going to fix it. But you can do some things, we can do some things to help, but it's horrible. And the lesson, cutting to the chase here, the lesson really is, boy, you really need to build a system that prevents this from happening in the first place. That's because there is no magic way to just make this go away. There is no magic way to solve this. If you're worried about this, if this is a problem, you got to build the system from the beginning in a way that prevents this from happening. And we'll see some more pictures and some information on what I'm talking about. So this is a fun little thing, and you can see the link in the, oops, let me hit reset. So I reset it to 0, reset, and then start again. And, and then you can play this game again, and then you can try it again. You can delay this bus instead. I'm going to delay it, delay, and let go. And oops, here we go again. And then now I've got the other bus bunching and delayed. And so just a cute little demo, but it's completely accurate in terms of what we see in real transport systems and real operations, lots of different places. So anyway, I will set that aside for the moment here and come back to our presentation. Yes, here we go. We're back to the presentation. All right. So yes. So, what does this mean for the passengers? Yeah, a lot of things. Number one, obviously, you leave late. Many of you then leave late from your departure, because if the buses are bunched, that means the bus that you maybe are waiting for does not leave on time. So now you leave late. Then number two, that bus that is the lead bus, that is the bunch leader, it will just get slower and slower, because at every stop, it will accumulate a higher foot traffic of passengers, and that will mean a longer dwell time, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse. And the traditional ways to deal with this are not pleasant. They rank right up there with going to the dentist and breaking up with your girlfriend. The traditional ways to deal with this, couple of ways you deal with this. The bus driver is instructed to, when he gets really behind schedule, the bus driver, and there's a bus behind him, the bus driver is told, hey, don't stop. Skip the stops. Don't stop the bus. Drive on through. That's a great winner for customer satisfaction. But that's what very often happens in dense. Normally we're talking about a city transport system with high density and a lot of buses, bunched. If the driver looks in his rearview mirror and sees the bus is right behind him, yeah, that the driver may start skipping stops. He may just skip stops. So that creates all kinds of lovely passenger customer satisfaction issues where you got a bunch of people standing at a bus stop waiting for a bus and they see the bus just drive right by without stopping with, you know, empty seats or something. So yeah, driving right by, that's the one that comes to mind first off. Sometimes sometimes you, if you're lucky, the people, the dispatchers that control the service, if they know about this, they can dispatch another bus and get it to jump out in front of the bunched buses and start a route halfway in the middle. But that requires a lot of resources and a lot of supervision and a lot of people managing the process and extra people to drive these extra buses. So that you don't see that so often either. But anyway, so for the passengers, this is not good. So we don't like this. We obviously do not like this. And I've already said this. So here here's a little exercise. I take a few minutes to kind of run this. So here's something I'll give you a minute to think about, or a few minutes as I take a little drink of my coffee. In your mind, what are the numbers here for these answers? I have to admit, I didn't take the time to make a solution slide with the exact answers to these, but I can tell you the answers pretty much off the top of my head. But take a few minutes, just kind of look at these ideas. And what we're interested in is we're pretty much interested in how much longer is the delay? What is the delay for the passengers? What is the average change in travel time for the passengers in these four situations? And I'll give you a few minutes to kind of toy with that, take a little scribble, kind of think about it, and then I'll tell you what the basic answers are. And there's a formula on the next slide, but you're not obligated to learn this formula or anything like that. It's just for discussion. So just take a little drink of coffee while you guys think about this. So the top of the slide says, what is the average waiting time? It's a little bit misleading because we're just looking at the numbers for 2 or 3 specific examples. So we're not exactly looking at this on this slide at a large statistical sample of information here. So to say, what is the average? But what is the average? What is the resulting waiting time for these specific events, for these specific examples here? So in the first one there, everybody's on time, everything's great. So in the first one, the average waiting time is going to be 5 minutes. It's a 10-minute headway. It's 10 minutes between buses. And if the passengers are randomly arriving to the bus stop, not on a schedule. Now, I can't remember. I think I said something about this. I think I said something about this in a previous lecture on timetabling. I think I did. I'm pretty sure I did. So we talked about, okay, do passengers arrive randomly to a bus, to a transport stop, or do they arrive on a schedule? And I think we talked about the data from Denmark and the research from Denmark that says in a system like Denmark's, in our system, from 5 minutes or less, it's completely random. That is, when the services, the transport services function at a 5 minutes or less headway, at a frequency of 5 minutes or less, nobody looks at the schedule. Nobody looks at the schedule, they just go. And then as we start to climb up towards 10 minutes between services, people start to be a little bit more, progressively more focused on the schedule. And then above 10 minutes, it becomes very much schedule focused. And at 20 minutes, people are definitely looking at the schedule, and they're making sure they arrive at the stop, at the transport stop, you know, at the time the timetable says it's going to go, right? So here we are at 10 minutes, and we're going to argue that these are random arrivals, but we're on that boundary. For a Danish situation, we're kind of on the boundary where some of these people are actually not going to be random. They're going to be a little bit more careful of the schedule and try to arrive on that 10-minute point. But just for the sake of argument, we're going to say these are random arrivals. So with a random arrival, over time, the average over a long cycle is the average passenger is going to have a 5-minute wait at the bus stop because they arrive at random, and the next bus could be 10 minutes away, could be 1 minute away, could be 30 seconds away. And the average of all that over many, many passengers is going to be 5 minutes. So it's basically the headway, the frequency between the buses divided by 2. Frequency between the buses divided by 2. If we assume a random passenger arrival, frequency of the bus is divided by 2. Okay. And that will not be true when we get into 15 and 20-minute headway. That will not be true because people are then following a schedule, they're following a timetable, and then forget it. That whole logic doesn't work. Just throw it out. So now we look at example 2 here on the second example, line number 2, and we have a bus that's 2 minutes late. So so the waiting time, average waiting time for the people waiting for that second bus is going to be 6 minutes. It's going to be 6 minutes. And the average waiting time for the people for the third bus is going to be smaller. It's going to be probably, it's going to be 4 minutes. 8 divided by 2. And then you can run through these and see this as we run through this a little bit each example. So that the more we get these spreads in the bus deviation, the more we get more waiting time, average waiting time for the passengers. And there's a formula on the next slide. And actually, as I've been sitting here talking to you about these numbers, now in my head, I've realized now how that formula really works. And now I wish we had a bigger set of data to demo this because, but let's just go take a look at that formula. Here's the formula. And so, so I'll read this out to you. It's a little mathematic here, a little bit of math. Hope it doesn't scare anybody. So the expectation, which is a fancy word for average, the expectation of the waiting time, the W, expectation of the waiting time of the passengers at the stop is going to be the headway that we just talked about divided by 2 times this multiplying factor, which is a function of the covariance of the, I think that's what the CV is standing for, though I'm a little not sure about that, that's being applied correctly, that CV term. But anyway, the formula is correct. I'm just not sure what to call CV. I'm tempted to say covariance, but somehow that seems a little, maybe not. But anyway, the formula is correct. So headway divided by 2 times 1 plus CV squared, and then CV squared is going to be the standard deviation. Oh, sorry, hold on. I got an important person at the door here. Come here, you. Somebody didn't want to get left out in the hallway, so he's scratching at the door, and if I don't let him in, he's going to mark the paint. He's going to put scratches all over the door. So we got our extra classmate here with us. Anyway, yeah. So we have the CV squared term here is the standard deviation divided by the mean of that data on the previous slide. So I'm going to back that up here a little bit. Take a look at that. Come on, here we go. So what I'm talking about is if we had a lot more data, not just these 3 data points here. This is just a toy example for the slide. But if you had this data over the whole day, and you had all the measures of the separations between the buses for the whole day, or for a chunk of hours where the service is functioning at the same kind of delivery. So then you would measure those times between the buses, right? And have a huge spreadsheet or something with all this data. And then you want to calculate what is the average of those bus separations. And then you want to calculate the standard deviation of those bus separations. And so then if you look at this formula, so actually let me say it again here. So for example, line number 1, the first one. So very basic, not, a little bit too simple for reality, but line number 1, standard deviation is 0. You can see it. I mean, you don't have to talk. Standard deviation is 0 because there is 0 difference between the first headway and the second headway. It's 10, 10, 10. So the first headway is 10, the second headway is 10, standard deviation is 0. There is no deviation between those 2 headways. Okay. But then the second one, off the top of my head, I don't know what the standard is. There's some standard deviation in the second one, but I can't run that number off the top of my head just like that. And then the third one, the standard deviation gets higher. Standard deviation gets higher in the third one. And then in the fourth one, we got a really high standard deviation. We got a really high standard deviation. And in all 3-4 of these, the average headway has not actually changed. So for example, in line number 1, the average headway is 10 minutes. In line number 2, we have a 12-minute headway, and then we have an 8-minute headway. And so that is 20 divided by 2, and that's 10. And then in line number 3, we have a 15-minute headway, and then a 5-minute headway. That's 20 divided by 2, and it's 10. So, and the same thing, line number 4, 20-minute headway, 0 headway, because the 0 is because the third bus is on the tail lights of the second bus. So it's counted as 0 because the 2 buses are traveling together. So the fourth line, 20-minute headway, 0-minute headway divided by 2, it's 10. So all of these have a 10-minute average headway. So we look at the formula here. So you would take those numbers and over some period of time, a day or something, and you would run this formula and you would calculate your average headway and your standard deviation of the headway and throw it into this formula, and that would give you the expected headway, the expected waiting time for the customer waiting at the bus stop here. So fun note, something good to know. Something we won't touch again. I very much doubt that this will do anything in your project, but it's nice to know. Maybe you'll use it in your future job. So how do we solve this thing? How do we solve this thing? Well, boy, this is where I'm sorry to editorialize here a little bit. But this is where I get a little annoyed at the research community and various other things. And, it's kind of like, Elon Musk, and his Tesla group, he's got a solution for everything, right? I'll just make something on the internet and start up my 3D printer and we'll solve that problem. But it doesn't always work that way. And there are a lot of proposals for okay, well, if we just implemented this technology, all the bus bunching would go away. It doesn't really work. There's some things that can help, but not so much. And we'll see that in some more detail here in a minute. So yeah, electronic monitoring and computers, and yeah, if we could just get the street lights to blink a certain way, all this would go away, but not really. But let's take a look at some examples. Vehicle location. So we have this in Denmark, and a lot of modern Western cities. Well, I say Western. That's a little bit of a racist term, I think, today. Western. We're Western. I mean, developed countries, because there are plenty of Asian countries that are very well developed and very modern and very educated. So these days of talking about Western versus everything else, I think they're over. Anyway, vehicle location, we have this. The Movia buses have vehicle location things. That's how that's how the little stop-still sign tells you when the next bus is coming, because there's the data, because the Movia is tracking the buses, and then they've got it in the data system, and then they're sending this update to the little digital sign at the bus stop to tell you when the next bus is coming. So we have that. That's great. Doesn't really solve the bus bunching problem so much, but it's great. It's great to know that your bus is 20 minutes delayed and that you have time to go to the bakery. So we have all this data, enormous amounts of data, and I have worked with some of these data files for some various research projects. So we have enormous amounts of data that we can pull on bus services from Movia. And then something about ticket sales. Now this is kind of not really matching with what I just finished talking about, right? Because this is more about trains and stuff like that. We don't have something like this for our bus systems. But I think this picture on the left, and this is the weakness of using someone else's slides, but I think this picture on the left is the ticket sale for bus rapid transit. So you have a bus rapid transit with the fancy platform and the dedicated lanes and stuff. And then people are doing their ticket check-in on the platform and not on the bus. And so that's something that really helps in cutting down the delays for the bus services. Fancy sensors all over the place. No, I don't. Sounds great. And there's plenty of people promoting this as, making great improvements to transport. Little improvement. But I as we'll see here later, it's not going to solve everything. Better driving of the bus, better things like that. Dedicated lanes, right? And as we'll see later here in a few slides, this is the answer. This is what it takes, and it costs money. And it requires a serious commitment to public transport, to collective transport, and not everybody's willing to do that. Not everybody's willing to make that, but that's what it really takes to solve this problem. Is dedicated lanes and a more integrated transport mode. And we'll see that here shortly. Signal prioritization. This is the holy grail, and I'm using that term holy grail. I don't know how much I'm stepping out of a language pot there. Maybe you only know it from the name of some movies or something like that. The holy grail. So this is the great magical goal that everybody wants to achieve, and it's also the great promise that through nearly my whole lifetime has been given as the solution. If we can just get those traffic lights to turn off and on in the right order, all our problems will go away. And so huge amounts of money have been spent on centralized traffic light control centers and research on better mathematical algorithms to drive traffic lights and all kinds of crazy stuff. But it's tricky, right? And it's not, number one, it's not actually mathematically true that it will lead to great improvements in your transport. And number two, it's still politically difficult, because when you make all these controls for these traffic lights, you have to choose winners and losers. You have to choose winners and losers. And I can't remember. Yeah, it was our class, right? It was our class. I had Thomas Sick Nielsen come visit from Vejdirektoratet. That was our class, not the other class. Anyway, yeah, remember that? And he showed the map of the traffic control system for Copenhagen. And does anybody remember what was missing on that map on the traffic control system for Copenhagen? Anybody remember that? I'm pretty sure it was our class, right? This was our class that, not the. I think I've got it right. I'm getting my head scrambled sometimes. I'm teaching the two transport classes in the same semester, and they have the same subject. It's just one is the advanced class and one is your class, and I sometimes lose track of what I taught in which class. But anyway, the answer is Frederiksberg. So he showed this big map of traffic control and road traffic control for Copenhagen, for Hovedstaden, and all the stuff that the state, that the national traffic center has control over, or the Copenhagen Commune's traffic control center has control over, and there was this big hole in the middle, and it was Frederiksberg, and you had all this work to synchronize traffic lights and to control traffic flow, but once you hit Frederiksberg, it stopped, and all the traffic lights in Frederiksberg are just on a timer. There is no traffic control in Frederiksberg. So all this effort to control traffic and get it to flow smoothly on this network, and then you hit the boundary with Frederiksberg and it just stops. And now it's just chaos. And so there's political issues that have to be resolved when you talk about stuff like this. So anyway, and it gets tricky, right? Because let me tell you what's in this picture here. So this is the passive signal prioritization in English, signal prioritization. The problem is that you synchronize, and you see this, you don't see this I have not seen this in Europe, but you can see this in America. You can see this, and sometimes they do this as a way to try to get people to stop speeding, going too fast in their driving. And you'll see a sign in a town or a city that says, "These traffic lights have been timed for 30 miles an hour," and the implication, the point of that sign is to say, "Hey, you don't drive any faster. You're wasting gas, and you're screwing up the traffic, because you can drive 40, 45 miles an hour, and all you're going to do is wait at a red light when you get there. So you need to slow down and drive 30 to stay within the flow of the traffic lights. So here's this picture on the right here, and that's what this picture is showing. This picture says, so green is a green traffic light, red's a red traffic light. And what this picture is saying is we can synchronize the traffic lights to smooth the flow of the traffic, but the dotted lines there are the traffic flow for the general automobiles and trucks. And the solid line with the bus is the bus, and the problem is now the bus has to make a passenger stop. The bus has to pull over and make a passenger stop. And so now the bus is not in this traffic flow. And so now the bus gets stuck. You can see down there in the lower right part of the picture, now you can see that the bus is stopped at a red light. So the traffic flow is nice and smooth through the green lights, and then the bus makes its passenger stop, and then it pulls out again, and whoop, there's a red light, and the bus stops. So there's a problem, right? Because you can't solve this picture for all the traffic. You can't do it. If I make the traffic lights and change them so that the bus gets the green light, then all of that other traffic on the road is going to be delayed. It's going to have a horrible time. So it's a problem. There's no magical passive signal prioritization. So then we go to the next slide here. And this is a further problem that we're still talking about the same technology, passive signal timing. So now what we have here, a little more complicated picture, but let me kind of walk you through this picture here. I wonder if I want to draw on this. Oh, I keep forgetting. Here we go. Let's try this. Come on. Yes. And what would I like to draw? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So on the left side here, we got, these are road intersections. There's a road intersection, there's a road intersection, right? All of this down here. And then on the right here, we have the color of the traffic lights. We have the color of the traffic lights here. Green, red, red. All right. Okay. And now with a diagram like this, so we're talking about the travel in this direction on this diagram, right? And in both directions. So these colors on here, these are the traffic lights in that direction, in that orientation. So when this is green for the traffic going north to south here, then you invert that. It's going to be red for the cross traffic, right? So we're assuming here that this north-south road is the important road, and that's why the green on here is bigger for the north-south road than it is for the east-west roads, except for right here, except for this road down here. It looks like the colors are evenly balanced. So on this road, it looks like this road is important and has an equal balance of flow. And so it needs the timing to be balanced. So anyway, so here we have lights balanced for the road traffic. So we have the road traffic in these nice flow patterns here. And it's all timed so that they can make their nice journey without any stops or without any delays or anything like that. And then here we have the bus. We have a couple of buses. And we got to get these buses to fit within the green timing of the green traffic lights and make their stops. So each one of these little step things here is a bus stop. There's a bus stop. There's a bus stop. There's a little bus stop. There's a little bus stop. Those are all bus stops. So it's tricky, right? It's tricky. You gotta, it's kind of chicken and the egg, which comes first. Do we time the lights first? And then after we've timed the lights, Do we then set the bus stops and fit the bus stops to fit in with what we think the timing of the lights is? But it's still a challenge, right? Because we just talked about bus bunching. We talked about, well, things could go wrong. Things could go crazy at the bus stop and say, look at this bus here. Everything's great. We're chugging along here. We're doing our thing. Everything's wonderful. Everything's wonderful. Oops. Three young mothers with barn bone and a tourist from Oklahoma who doesn't understand why he can't use his American driver's license as a rice accord. And now the bus is delayed and, oh, it missed the green cycle. It missed the green cycle, right? So now the bus is waiting. Then it does its thing, right? And tries to, and if we're lucky, it can catch up, we hope, but it might not. It might not. It might not. This window's pretty big right here, but this window's kind of tight. And it might not make it. It might just be kind of, just kind of swiggling along here, and then wham, it gets hit here and it's delayed again. So now you can imagine where that's going. So now that bus has got a significant delay, and the delay is measured right here. Right? A lot of delay right there. So it's tricky. So the passive signals, that's a problem. That's a problem for bus traffic, for collective bus traffic. So what do we do? Well, come on, I gotta cancel this, clear, and back to the show. All right. So active signals. Active signals, we get some magical computer in there and get the signals to modify themselves according to what's really going on out there in the traffic. Still not perfect, right? Because, okay, now you got to choose who's the leader, who's in charge of all this. Well, is it the bus company? What is the priority we give to the bus? Is it absolute priority, or is it, well, most of the time if we feel like it? And so this is where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. A little traffic humor there. So we have to you get all these brilliant PhDs together and they write their formulas for how to manage these traffic lights, but they got to make some hard decisions. They got to, there's no free lunch. There's no magic win-win here. You gotta write formulas. You gotta write priorities into the formulas and say, who's the winner and who's the loser? Who's going to really drive? Who's going to have the priority at these traffic lights? And but it can be better. It can be better. It's better than just a dumb timer. It's better than just a fixed timer. And you can get something out of it. You can do some better. And we have that in Copenhagen. So we have a lot of that in Copenhagen, in the traffic center and in the buses, especially in Copenhagen proper, in the real dense parts of Copenhagen. So we could do that. And then again, what is the priority? And then you probably knew this already, but just in case you didn't know this, obviously, in many cities, and I'm pretty sure this is a little bit outside my knowledge area, but I'm pretty sure we have this in Copenhagen as well. Emergency vehicles, fire trucks, and things like that, they have a control signal in their vehicle, and they can force signal lights to change to suit them, to change, to give them passage. And this is this was rocket science 20 years ago, but today it's very common. It's very common to hear about this and see it. And in dense urban areas where you have a complex traffic control system, it's very common to see this. So you can have, we up to this point, we've been talking about priority, but now this slide is saying, okay, wait a minute. And interesting that, in Danish we have these two words, but in English, not so much. I don't think we don't really have this idea of two levels of priority. The priority is just one word in English. I guess we would say in English, I guess we would say absolute priority or something like that. But anyway, we're showing in this picture, the idea of giving certain kinds of vehicles, certain traffic, absolute priority, mandatory priority, or something like that. So that's a little bit beyond the subject of us talking about collective transport. That's just a gee whiz technology moment here. And then, then we get into there's some slides here about how do we get into the technology of detecting the buses and collecting the data and doing all these kinds of things. And I think with pretty good confidence, I mean, I'm not a bus nerd, I'm not a bus tosser, but as I said earlier, I know enough to be dangerous. So I think the days when we put cables in the road and measure information by physically putting some kind of cable in the road, like it says there, the detector type, it says loop in the road, those days are gone. There's some of those probably still in service some places, but they're obsolete for the most part. They're high maintenance, and they've been replaced by various kinds of visual sensors, camera sensors, and GPS and stuff like that. So I think today, almost all of, for example, for Movia, I think it's almost all going to be based on the vehicle location system for the buses. And then for the traffic, for the light sensors, it's all going to be based on some kind of camera sensor that senses vehicles occupying the lane. I used to have kind of a silly side story, and these sensors built into the pavement are not always the greatest. So I remember many, many, many years ago living in a town in America where the left turn lane for the stoplight was driven by one of these sensors in the pavement in the road. And when they had installed it incorrectly. And they had installed it in the pavement, not at the correct location relative to the white stripe on the left turn lane. They had installed it too far back. So if you drove over it and stopped at the white stripe in a compact or economy car that wasn't too big, the sensor didn't see you. So you sat there at the white stripe waiting for the left turn signal, and the left turn signal never came. And the only way to activate it was to, you wouldn't know this unless you'd been using this intersection all the time. And late at night, when there's no traffic and you're alone and there's no other cars, you would just wait at that white stripe for the light to change, wait and wait and wait and wait, and go watch the lights go through a cycle and a cycle and a cycle, and it would never give you the green turn arrow. And then I eventually realized the problem, and I would realize that I would have to put the car in reverse and back up so that the car was over the sensor loop in the pavement in order to get the lights to register and change and give me the green arrow. So this is just one example of why the idea of loops in the pavement are not nobody likes this. It's high maintenance, it's expensive, and not so great. But that's one way that you can measure this kind of stuff. So here's some statistics. Here's the citation for where it comes from in this paper in the lower right. 2010. I have never read that paper. This is I cannot promise you that I agree with all of these results, but I would probably correct. Yeah, okay, we put these things in and everything gets better. Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles. Not sure if those examples are comparable to Europe, but for America, they're much lower traffic density and very different traffic conditions, and a lot of things, and much greater distance between signals also, much greater distance. Typical traffic in America, longer distances between the traffic signals and a lot more random traffic in the lanes and things like that. So anyway, passenger information systems, this, we all know this stuff. I don't need to talk about this. I can see the clock over there. See the clock over there. Why don't we, what time is it? Yeah. Let's take a coffee break. My coffee's cold. I want to put it in the microwave and warm it up. Let's take a coffee break. 10 minutes. And I'll be right back. 10 minutes. And continue this conversation. So 10 minutes. I don't know if Bo here is hungry. Maybe he wants breakfast. I don't know. See, he's just chilling over here. But we'll see. We'll get everybody settled up. So 10 minutes. See you in 10 minutes. That means like 9 minutes before the hour. All right. See you back. You want some breakfast, Bo Bear? Some breakfast? Come on. Bo Bear, come on.
Okay, you go here. Oh, get your backy scratch this morning. Oh yeah. Yeah, morning backy scratch. Oh yeah. Morning backy scratch. Oh yeah. Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Bull Bear. Yeah. Yeah. Your eyes bother you? Let me get your eyes. Come here, Mr. Bull Bear. Oh, come here. Let me get your eyes. Yeah. 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 Get your eyes. Yeah. Okay. All done. Yeah. You wanna go downstairs? You wanna go downstairs, see mommy? No, you stay here. Make up your mind. Which one? Okay. All right. Yay. All right. So we're back. We're back. Hope you all found something good to drink, to eat. Mmm. Bo Bear has not had breakfast yet. He doesn't want to eat yet. He's like that. He can be mighty picky. He doesn't. He's like, I'm not hungry. I don't want to eat. So, not yet. Not yet. He's not an early morning kind of dog. So, yeah. So this is no big rocket science here. So we're back talking about vehicle information monitoring. Yeah. So we got this. We got this in Denmark. We can do this. You know, and this is, you know, stuff like Risa Planner and stuff like that. Now, you know, I'm curious, you know, I'm looking at this picture. Man, that must be a really old, Risa Planner. That's before my time. That's before I came to Denmark. That must be a picture from like 10 years ago. I haven't seen any, I've never seen something that looked like that. It must be an older version. But anyway, we've all seen that. That's old news to us. In the apps and stuff, we live this, you know, so it's no big deal. So I'll talk a little bit about you know, our dispatching strategy and what can we do to again, remember, we're still talking about bus bunching. We're still talking about that. All of this is really about bus bunching. You know, how can we do this? Well, here's some ideas. I mentioned some of these ideas earlier, but you know, strategies for interesting Danish word there, kurigerne. So I guess that would mean like tactical, you know, dynamic tactical strategies. You know, turning buses. What that means is, if there's any doubt what that means to you, it means, but we see that sometimes with trains and stuff too, with S-Bahn, you know, having the bus not finish its route, having the bus stop short at the end of its route and turn around and come back the other way. Again, that only makes sense in really high density routes, because you could imagine how angry we're. I'll tell you another funny story, how that can make someone really angry, right? So I can tell you stories back in the days when I used to live up in Hillerød and commuting from Lundby, and sometimes I took the bus up the motorway. I took the 150S bus to Horsholm, and then connected to the 375 at Horsholm Midpunkt up into Hillerød. And there was a time I'm coming home, you know, late in the night, you know, like, I don't know, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, something like that. And I get to Horsholm and then stand there and it's cold in the winter, looking at the bus indicator, and, you know, it's timing, it's clicking down its time, you know, 10 minutes, 9 minutes, you know, 7, 6, gets to zero.
And then, boop, 60 minutes. So they had canceled the bus. They had canceled it somehow, either mechanical failure or who knows what. They had canceled the bus. But so clearly, turning the bus and canceling the journey is not a strategy you can do on connecting bus routes where this frequency of the bus is 20 minutes or more. Can't do that. It's not gonna work. And then springing, I talked about skipping stops and springing over stops and things like that, overhauling, passing. So different things you can try to do, but none of them are perfect, right? None of them are perfect. Ultimately, the real solution is just quality control at the source. You just gotta control for the fundamental managerial things in running the bus service. And we'll take a little more ideas on that. And then this only makes sense. This stuff here only makes sense if your objective is to maintain regularity in the headways. So that would be the A buses in Copenhagen, the A buses. So the A buses are measured by regularity, not by timetable. So here we're looking at an example where we implement some policies, and our measure of success is the buses are evenly spread apart. But that only makes sense if we have a service with a 5 minutes or less frequency, and so the A buses in Copenhagen. So this is a very limited application right here. So here's a summary of some of the things we've talked about, some of the ideas, just a review. But here's the kicker right here. Okay, this is nice little paper done a few years ago by our good friend and the author of most of these slides, Jesper Ingvarsson, as part of his PhD study here at Transport DTU, or DTU Transport as it was called at that time. And you can find this paper very easily, I think, at the DTU library, but this just kind of summarizes some of the basic results. And here he was particularly looking at BRT and light bane and stuff like that. So let's take a look at some of these results here. And this is the way he did it. I'm not going to get into that. That's probably not exciting to you guys. Here's the route he's looking at. He's doing a simulation study of this chunk of the 5C bus route as it is and what it could be, and some basic background material on the system. And then what are the opportunities for improving this? And then here are the results right here. Here are the results basically. And oops, I thought there was a highlighter on that slide. I guess it's not. Here are the results, and the gist of this is, so I'm going to draw on this a little bit here. Yeah, let's draw a little something. So this is the baseline. Whoops, that's not what I want to draw. Here. All right, let's try something else. Let's try that. So here's the base. So that's as is right now. And then all of this stuff is, in summary, all of that stuff is all these things we've been talking about up to this point. Signals and change in ticket sale and doing different strategies with how you hold the buses at different stops and all kinds of stuff, and intelligent transport technology, magic. That's what all that is. And then over here, so what are we measuring? We're primarily measuring this average running time right here.
And then way over here, and then we have some data on variance and regularity, and then a measure of improvement. And I didn't actually read the paper in detail or check to see what this measure is exactly. But it's a percentage change on one of these columns. I don't know which column it is. It might be based on the first column, average running time. Might be percentage change compared to the first column. So this is a 15%. Now that doesn't make any sense at all, because this number 26 minutes is higher than this number. So that 15%, I wonder where that's coming from. I bet it's this regularity right here. I bet it's this one. I bet it is. I bet it is. So this percent change is the percent change of this regularity measure right here. So our goal is regularity. Our goal in this table of data is, I'm going to jump back here quick. Oh, I can't do that. Our goal in this table of data, quickly, I know I got drawings all over the screen. Just hold on. There we go. So our goal is this guy, is to get regularity as we see in this diagram right here. So let's go back. Yeah, so that's the goal. And so we can see that, some fancy dispatching and stuff like that gets us regularity at 15% improvement, maybe. But it gets us regularity. This is kind of like a bad joke. This kind of, it's kind of like saying prune juice makes you regular in the morning, but maybe that's not necessarily what you want. So this is getting us regularity. We got lovely regularity here, but we just made the journey longer. See that over on the left side over there? We got regularity at the expense of a longer ride, of a longer journey time, and a slower vehicle speed. And so that's, if I hate those kinds of solutions, right? It's like, yeah, I can make your McDonald's hamburger cheaper. I'll just make it smaller. What did that solve? So anyway, but then down here, then we have the, come on. Yeah. Down here, we have the real solutions. So what is the real solution? Well, the real solution is a dedicated lane. The real solution is a dedicated traffic lane, a dedicated railway. The real solution is if you're serious about providing quality public transport, quality collective transport, you got to take the transport out of the damn road. You got to separate it from the unwashed masses of the road traffic, of the car traffic and the random drivers on the road and stuff like that. And bye. It is crazy. So my wife is also a teacher, and she also needs to be doing this. And so she's down in the stew, in the Dowley stew, whatever, in the living room, also logged in on her computer doing some kind of video conference. So this is crazy. This is crazy. But anyway, if you really want to solve your transport problems, you got to take your medicine, and you got to switch to a dedicated transport system like light rail or bus rapid transit. And you can see that in the figures here. So we simulate bus rapid transit and light rail, and we get an even bigger improvement. Let me change colors again here. This is getting colorful. You like all these colors? That's the colors. Look at this. Here we go. Lots of color. Look at that. Yellow. So we get even better regularity improvement. Look at this. We got lots of regularity improvement here. And, and bonus, we get both. And we get a faster travel time. So if you're serious about that, and you really gotta make that commitment, you gotta get in there and put in the infrastructure. And you can't replace that. There's no magic way that timing traffic lights and fooling around with the ticket sales and fooling around with new dispatch strategies for your bus system are going to achieve this. It's not going to happen. I could have told you that 20 years ago, but at least we now have the research to prove it. And this is part of the argument about why should we have light rail instead of just buses? Why should we have light rail instead of just buses? And all of these measures are important. And you can't achieve these things. You can't achieve these things with just standard bus traffic. You can't do that. And then the last question, of course, then this argument about bus rapid transit versus light rail, and I'm sure many of you are studying that in some detail in your exam projects. And then someone talking? That's okay. I think that's just background static. I don't hear. I think someone just has their microphone on and they got a little.
What's the change next to the commercial speed?
Okay. That's the change compared to, so this number, here we go. This number, for example, comes from this and this. So that's a negative 23%. So it was, well, this is faster, obviously. So yeah, okay, negative 23. It is kind of funny. If you're just going faster, you would think it'd be going faster. Let's have a positive. I mean, you pull out your calculator and do the numbers here. But I think the way, I bet it's just the way he stated. It's probably maybe not the most artful way of, I'm going to do the numbers. Let's do this. 15 to 4.4 divided by, no, let's try a different one. Yeah, okay. So I get, the difference between those two is 4.4 kilometers an hour. And if I divide 4.4 by 19.6, I get the 23. I don't know if I necessarily would do it that way. I'm not sure I would have presented the data in that format. It doesn't make sense to me. I think I would have presented it as, the percent change relative to the 15 kilometers an hour. So if it were my paper, I would have written 4.4 divided by 15.2 gives me 29%. I would have written positive 29%. I don't know why, maybe he was tired, it was late at night and he just wanted to get this done. Who knows? I swear to God, it happens that way sometimes. Sometimes you're writing a paper and you just like, let's get this done. And, yeah, I'm not sure why it just is what it is. But yeah, so that number in the change column is the percent reduction from the number to the left relative to the original baseline number. So a higher negative number is a good thing, but it's not necessarily the way I would describe it, write that number out. But yeah, so
So we have BRT and LRT, and you can see we say, wow, they're really competitive on average running time, right? So 20 minutes and 19 minutes and 57 seconds, they're the same. They're basically the same. So if you look at just that number, you might say, oh, let's just do BRT. It's so much cheaper and we don't need to do all this stuff. But we are missing something. The regularity on the LRT is over here on the right, that you have an 80 headway time regularity is a significant improvement over the BRT's regularity. Where is that coming from? It's coming from the technology. It's coming from larger doors on the vehicle. It's coming from a vehicle that follows a fixed path that the driver does not have to steer. And all these little bits add up. And those extra bits of reliability and regularity, they are what lead to a better headway regularity. And I haven't read this paper in great detail to know exactly how that's being measured. I'd have to, dig into the calculations and the text of the paper, but it matches my expectations. It matches my general understanding of these transport modes and their strengths and weaknesses, and what I definitely expect from my personal experience and my years of following transport systems. That there are measurable and tangible things that are better and different in light rail compared to a bus rapid transit, and you can't get away from that. And so it is not true that bus rapid transit is an equal replacement for light rail. It is not true. It's something that a lot of people like to claim, and it's especially something that politically motivated people who basically don't support public transport in the first place like to say, because the truth is they don't give a damn, and they really don't want public transport, and they're looking for any excuse they can find to not spend money on it. And so bus rapid transit is their favorite tool to argue against public transport and to fight against investments in quality public transport. And you see it over and over and over again. And I bet if you guys, anybody out there who's doing BRT versus light rail, you better be discovering some of these people and some of these papers that they write and some of their news items that they write and the political groups that they create to support these viewpoints. And it's quite intricate. It's quite large. Anyway, let's get on. I'm burning time. You guys are getting tired, I bet. You're tired of sick of hearing me talk all the time. Let's get on here. Let's get over this. All right. So more data here. And you can see clearly that the free travel is a big improvement with the dedicated lanes, and lots of good data there. Let's move on. I'm starting to run over time of what I planned. More data. Let's move ahead. Lots of fun here. More data again. Regularity. I'm just gonna get on because I've overspent my budget on how long I wanted to give you guys a presentation. So I want to get out of here. Regularity, more stuff, and we're done. Good. Okay. So I already said this. So after POSCA, we're gonna do DSB's visit with Zoom, and then the week after that is supposed to be Movia. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Because I'm just guessing. The prime minister, has given public announcements that when we do move back after POSCA, it's going to be on a transition. So what that means to me is that we are the lowest priority in that transition, because those of us at schools and universities, we are the ones who are we have been doing it. We've been managing to run our classes and our operations in this mode. It's not fun, but we've been able to do it throughout this whole crisis. So that means to me that we are the lowest priority for the government to issue orders to go back to a physical building, to go back into our physical buildings. So I'm going to bet that we will finish the semester in this format. But what the prime minister, what the government will prioritize is things like getting people back to work at factories, getting people back to work at offices, getting people back, those kinds of things. So I'm going to bet that the first priority in reopening after Easter is workplaces, factories, stuff like that. Then the next priority is going to be something like, I don't know, maybe loosening restrictions on restaurants, maybe, or something. And then education, and then at the very last, really big movie theaters and festivals. Maybe movie theaters and then festivals. So Roskilde Festival might just barely make it this year. We might, we just might, because that's going to be end of June. And, it might just make it. Might just make it that Roskilde Festival can reopen. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. That's also a really, really, really prime environment to spread disease, right? I mean, that'll be interesting. It'll be a tough call. We would have to be really, really under control for them to let Roskilde go forward in the standard way. So it's interesting. We'll have to think about that. But I think education will also be a low priority. So I have a feeling we're going to be in this mode through the end of the semester. And that means, I suppose, the Movia visit will also be something that we'll ask them to do over Zoom. So anyway, so this is the end of my presentation. As I said, I would like to hear what you guys are doing in your projects. We kind of just had a coffee break here, so maybe we can just jump right into this. So whoever would like to say a little something about your project, and any questions you have, now's the time, because we won't see each other again. Well, we won't see each other again until you have something to show me, until we have, because I think the plan continues. And I will send a message out about this, actually, because I will send a message out about this. I think, so we originally said, hey, you're going to make a poster. Well, good luck with that, right? We don't have anywhere to hang these posters. Oh, someone chatted me something. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Tonya. When I'm doing the presentation, I'm so sorry, guys. The chat window closes and it doesn't like ring a bell or tell me anything. It doesn't ring a bell or tell me. Okay, good. Thank you. And this is a little bit annoying. So I'm sorry, guys. The chat window thing, you got to like hit your microphone and scream at me, because the chat window, it closes and then it doesn't like show me if somebody has typed something while I'm in the middle of doing the present. So sorry about that. Anyway, we had planned on a poster, and we went through all that effort to get the poster printer to work. And of course, you don't have access to a poster printer, and I don't want to look at your poster digitally on the screen. So I think the logical thing is we just go back to, you create a PowerPoint slide, but make it like the poster. So you just take the pieces of the poster and just make them as slides. And then, you know, I can look at that much better, and you can present that much better, you know, in our little digital meeting. So that's a change. So whatever the poster you've been working on, all you got to do is cut out pieces of it and fit them onto slides in PowerPoint, and that's fine. And let's do that. And I will send a message out to repeat that in case somebody is missing that comment from me now. Again, so yeah. So who wants to tell me something about what they're doing? And all of us. And you know, what can I help you with?
Okay, Steven. So what you want is
Yeah.
2 different cities with 2 different transportation in both cities, and then we have to compare them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Are we going to the poster or the PowerPoint we're making? Is that like the start of the report we're going to write later?
Yeah, it is. The idea,
Okay.
yeah, the idea was, in fact, let me pull up the original instruction here so we can remember what we're talking about. Here we go. I'm gonna pull that up and we'll put that over here. Come on. And I'm gonna share a screen. And there it is. Yes, there it is. And a little bit bigger. Maybe too big. Maybe that's too big, too big. That's better. Where are we going here? Let's see. Stuff we got to do. Stuff we got to do. Right. So, come on. There we go. And let's do that. Yeah. So this is what we're talking about, the poster, and now we'll make it a PowerPoint instead. And I'm going to grade this thing. But we'll not do a poster anymore. We'll do PowerPoint slides, and you know, kind of compare. You gotta do. I can't do both at the same time. Here we go. Come on. And oh, when I move that, that's all right. And when I, you know, so this is what's got to be on the poster, basically. I mean,
Okay. Do you suggest using 2 towns from 2 different countries or the same country?
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Okay.
It doesn't matter. But it won't be very exciting if they both come from the same political structure. Right?
Oh, exactly.
Right? I mean, it isn't going to be very exciting if you're comparing Hunnestål and Roskilde. It's not. It's the same company. It's the same region, same region.
Yeah.
Politics. So it's
Okay.
exciting. They you know.
Yeah.
Has to be. They need to have 2 different political structures. They need to have different ideologies so that you can see, and maybe even a different economy. You know, like a different culture, so that, or a different economic structure, so that you can see that.
For example, Nordsjælland and Falster or something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 Boo Denmark and Ulkens Denmark, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, they're different needs, different economy, different structures. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, I mean, I think you get the idea. I mean, um, just an idea. I mean, for example, I mean, you could definitely see political and different priorities in, say, for example, if you were to look at Glasgow transport network, Glasgow, Scotland, and Copenhagen. There are definitely, right? There are very definitely differences in terms of what their priorities are and where they put their money and how they've decided to support and develop the transport system, and stuff like that. Yeah, yeah. But you can also see, yeah, and I can think of a million examples from America, you know, but for Europe, yeah, like Rome, Italy compared to Augsburg, Germany, right? Their difference in size, their difference in culture, and they have over the last 30 years also had a difference in their preferred technology for transport. Rome, Italy has a variety of transport modes, but the ones that they've spent money on have been primarily the bus system. And only in like the last 10 years, I would say, has Rome spent money developing light rail. And they went through a long period, most of my lifetime, really, they went through a long period where they ran some light rail, but it wasn't light rail. It was basically, it was not light rail. It was the remainder of an antiquated Sporvogn network. And they just kept running it with old vehicles and old technology, and because there was no political will to do anything different. And the money they invested in most of my lifetime went into their metro system, or it's not really a metro, it's a heavy rail subway. It's not a metro in the sense of a Copenhagen metro at all. It's a heavy rail underground S-Bahn, really. And then buses and their subway is where they spent their resources for nearly all of my life. And only in the last 10 years have they switched and started spending money on light rail, on a light rail investment. Yeah, so, but you'll see these things, and looking at why did they choose these transport modes, and the density of the areas that they serve. You know, there's a really, I mean, just in case it's curious to you, I mean, this may be too much out of your zone. You could discuss, for example, Aarhus. So Aarhus started out proposing a light rail system, and then they switched to bus rapid transit. And it was a big political decision, and it required a lot of stuff. It required a lot of negotiation. But there are other examples of this conflict between BRT and light rail. And there are also examples of conflict between light rail and subway. And actually, I like to use the word subway. I think it's more accurate to use the word subway in many conversations, because in many of our literature and the things we've done in this class, we've said metro, and we've used this word metro and labeled a bunch of things as metro, but that's not accurate, because the metro in Copenhagen and many cities like Copenhagen is a very different animal from the subway in New York City, or the subway in Rome, or the subway in a number of other, or the tube in London. Not least because a subway system to me is heavy rail. It's a heavy vehicle. It's a large vehicle. It's a heavier vehicle, heavy train. It's a heavy railway system. And a metro, to me, when we talk about something like Copenhagen Metro, is a light rail. It's a light system. It's a smaller system. It's a smaller vehicle. So it really is important to separate these heavy and light metro systems. So in Canada, in Toronto, Canada, there was a long fight, a political fight over many years in the 2000s, and early 2010s. There was a huge fight about light rail versus subway. And it was a big fight because there were two significant political groups or still are two significant political groups in the Toronto Omroll. It would be similar to the Hovedstaden, but the difference between our Danish Hovedstaden and Toronto's Hovedstaden is Toronto's Hovedstaden actually is a political unit. I mean, we have Region Hovedstaden, and it takes care of hospitals and stuff. But in Toronto, the Hovedstaden is actually a commune, is actually the greater commune of Toronto, and it has a government and it has power. And so there was a huge fight in Toronto about light rail versus subway. And the political groups in that fight were light rail was something favored by people who lived in the city, who lived in the urban parts of Toronto, who lived in the older urban density part of Toronto. They wanted light rail. They wanted light rail going up the middle of the street, go to the shopping, go to the stores, jump off and on, get off at the intersection. They wanted light rail. The Oudekants Toronto folk, the folk in the surrounding areas of what we would compare to Hillerød and Fredensborg and Humlebæk, these people in Toronto, Canada, they wanted subway. Why? Because they are suburban and they are automobile-oriented residents in automobile-oriented neighborhoods. And so their typical strategy would be drive the car to a parking lot and then take the subway into the city center to go to their job. And so they wanted subway. They wanted a subway system. They were looking for high-speed, long-distance transport to get them from their car, from their automobile to their job in the city center. And so there was a huge fight over this, and it was very, very tight because the Toronto government under one government had voted and approved a very large light rail project. And then there was an election change, and then there was a government change, and a fellow by the name of Ford, and I've got the names wrong, but there's two Ford brothers. And the first Ford brother, I don't remember what his first name was. The first Ford brother got elected as mayor of this Toronto commune, this Toronto Hovedstaden. And he was a character. He was a suburban guy, you know, all for cars and big houses and, you know, kind of Republican, kind of conservative. But he was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And he pushed through all these political changes and canceled the light rail project and replaced it with a subway project. And then promptly was videotaped smoking crack and enjoying a prostitute, and then died of drug addiction while he was in office. So he was replaced, obviously, by a new government from the other side, but then it was too late. They'd already committed to the construction projects and already had started building the subway. And now his brother, the other Ford, surprise, surprise, has in the last 2 years been elected as the premier for Ontario, which is the Del State, surrounding Toronto, Ontario province of Canada, and is initiating again a broad series of political changes, not the least of which is a transport policy that says no more light rail. So you get these political, and again, it's because his voting block is people driving a minivan, living out in a suburban house with a 2-car garage, and their political priority is not urban transit. Their political priority is a suburban lifestyle. So politics is a function in this matrix, in this exam upscale matrix. These decisions about transport modes, they don't just magically happen because somebody cranked up a spreadsheet and put a formula in and said, oh yeah, that's the answer. They are about lifestyle choices. They are about what is your vision for the future of the city? How do you want this city to look? How do you want this lifestyle and culture to look? And these choices in transport modes are fundamental to that. I encourage you to include sources and material about the politics behind these things. Who is pushing for these choices? Why did they do that? Who is voting for this? Why did they choose to? What is their vision for the future of that city? What do they think the city will look like in 10 years? I think that's very interesting and completely relevant, because in the end of the day, it doesn't matter how beautiful your Samfunds equation is or your statistical count of the variance of the dwell time at the stops. If there is a vision that the public and the residents and the board and the politicians have about what their future is going to look like and what that city is going to look like, they're going to choose that transport mode that supports that vision for the future. So yeah, so we got to compare some stuff here. And I think these instructions are pretty clear. You know, it's about discussing technology and people's needs and how do they fit together, and how is the vision of how these towns going to look, these cities. What is their vision and what do they want to be, and how does transport support that? How does the choice of the transport system support that?
Something, Stephen.
Yeah.
If we choose something where they're implementing something that was implemented voted through in December, so it's not implemented yet, can we choose something like that? Like there's free public transportation getting voted through all over Europe and the US, but it's not implemented yet. So it's more the idea that's coming in over the project than what is really going on, because we don't have exact data yet.
I would prefer that you choose something that's implemented.
Okay, perfect.
But you can, Luxembourg has implemented that.
Yeah, I was just looking at Kansas City in the United States that voted it through in December. So it got voted through and it's been implemented, but they don't really have any data specifics yet.
But that is, if we look at the diagram here, that's, remember, we do have in the matrix, we have specifically said transport mode. So that's not a transport mode.
Oh, they did it for the light rail.
But that's whether you pay for it or not, whether the ticket is free or whether you have to pay for the ticket, that doesn't have anything to do with, that's not changing this matrix. That doesn't change this. I mean, that this matrix is 2 cities, 2 transport modes, light rail, bus, train.
It does change number 5, where you say that if it's the city's strategy and life quality and economics.
Yeah, I do say transport lines. I think well, for example, I was really thinking about technology when I wrote that. I was really thinking about the location of the transport and the technology of the transport. and you're discussing more, okay, what if I make it free? Or what if I make the tickets free? You know, I'm never going to say no, never going to say absolutely not, but just be aware that I'm looking for something, something I can put my fingers on and grab. And because yeah, I mean, it's a relevant, I mean, it's interesting to talk about this question of whether transport should be free or not. I'll tell you another one that's has been written up about and is similar to what you're saying is Vienna, Austria. They implemented last year or 2 years ago, they implemented a very, very low cost Årskort annual card, €1 a day, €1 a day annual card that covers the entire Vienna transport system. And I've read a number of articles. I know for a fact you can Google it or look in the Guardian newspaper, and there's articles on Vienna's transport strategy, and they talk about what the effect this has had. But that is a discussion about essentially about efterspørsel, about demand, about transport demand, and how the price of transport influences people's use of transport. It might be more difficult to compare. Somebody's saying something. Let's see if I can get this. Come on. Yeah, somebody said something. Yeah, so Furkan says, I got your chat here. Furkan says, yeah, demographics, those traffic lines. Yeah, I think that's important. I think where do I put the traffic line? What population does it cover? Have I decided, for example, and in the Toronto example, have I decided that my future vision of the city is people driving their car to a parking lot and then taking a parking ride and then taking the train somewhere? Or is my vision a walking city? People walking in light rail, and they live on side streets close to light rail, and they walk and then catch the light rail and go somewhere. These are totally two different visions of urban development, right? Look at the vision of the urban development of Amar. All of this urban development in Amar along the metro, København's metro. Look at how that is structured and how that's developed. It's very much a walking community, closer packed housing density, and people walking to the metro station or to the bus or whatever, mostly the metro station. And compare that to the development of Fredensborg. Well, Fredensborg is a suburban town, much more automobile oriented, or any number of these bedroom towns in North Sjælland. I have some various examples like that, very much more automobile oriented. It's a different strategy, different transport strategy. So I think you should, I think you should definitely keep the matrix structure and talk about, two cultures, two cities, two economic structures, and then two transport modes, train, bus, light rail, BRT, something like that. And the ticket pricing is a little bit different. The ticket pricing is a third qualitative thing, third structure, but it doesn't really fit within what I've written as an independent. I mean, it affects things, but it by itself is I've really focused on the transport modes. I guess the only argument maybe, can you argue, here's a good one, can you argue that this policy of free transport, does it change? Here's a good one. Can you argue that this policy of a free transport system changes the kind of transport mode you're going to build? I think that's, if you can say that, if you can make that argument, then it fits in this exam project. But if the answer is, it doesn't change anything, well, then I would say don't do that. But if you can argue that because I'm going to have this free transport zone where there's free transport to everybody, no tickets, does that mean you're going to build a different transport system? Does that change the way you build it? That might be an interesting question, because now that's a huge long-term strategic question. Because if we spend all this money investing in fixed infrastructure, stations, track, tunnels, and then, new government comes along and says, hey, yeah, I think we want to make all the tickets free. Let's make transport free. Does that mean all of this transport structure that you built is wrong? And that's a scary question. I hope not. I really hope not, because man, that would mess up a lot of planning. I would hope not, but that would be the argument I think you would have to make, is that because I have a free ticket, because I have a free transport zone, now I need a different transport system. Now the structure of it has to be different. And now that could be your two cities, because you have Luxembourg already saying they're going to have free transport. So you could have Luxembourg as city 1, and then city 2 is London or something, or a city that is going to continue charging for tickets as long as we can imagine. So that's how I would structure that. So it would be city 1 free transport and city 2 still charging for tickets, and that represents the cultural aspect. That represents the cultural aspect and the economic aspect. But then you still have 2 transport modes. You still need the columns. You still need transport mode 1, transport mode 2, and the transport mode 1 is light rail, and transport mode 2 is bus or something. So that's how I would do that, or that's my thought on that. Yeah. Anybody else? Anybody else want to discuss stuff? Discuss stuff about your project.
Since we're making a PowerPoint for number 1,
Yeah.
part number 2, it says that we have to still do a poster. Is that going to be then the PowerPoint, or how are we going to do the exam? Because if we do a PowerPoint now, are we going to do a poster later?
At this part of the game, let's just assume PowerPoint, because after what I just said about what I think the opening is going to be, the reopening, it would be nice if we're back at the building and doing things normally again in May, but it may not happen. And the messages we're passing around in our faculty group, in our Univisors group, and internally, the kind of the vote, the kind of the opinion spread of the group is it's not going to happen. No, it's all a game. We're all guessing, right? We're all guessing, but a number of us are pretty much making plans on the assumption that we do not go back to the building in May. So that means your exams are going to be on Zoom. And so we'll do this on Zoom. And that means no big paper poster. Can't do it. Not going to happen. So yeah, I think I'll send a message out. I think we'll just assume for this point that the original idea of a big printed paper poster is gone. It's not happening, and we'll go with the same material on a PowerPoint slides. Bo Bear wants to go out. Hold on. Hey. All right. Yeah. Next. All right. Well, that's fine. I hope you guys are comfortable. Hope everything's going all right with you guys. Hope you're managing to survive in your home situation, whatever that may be. And so, good Posca, good spring break, and we'll see you on Wednesday the 15th after Posca. And I think I'll set up what is called a doodle and ask people to make a commitment to presenting their PowerPoint at certain times. And the original idea was to spread this out over the 2 weeks. So some people are going to go first and some people are going to go second. But I do need some people to be prepared to present on Wednesday after Posca. It's possible we could do all of them on Wednesday after Posca. I'll have to kind of calculate out in my head. I guess people need to sign up. I need to figure out how many groups do we have. And I don't know, if I give each one, I don't know, 10 minutes, see if it all fits. It may not all fit, may have to spread it out. As the course plan says, we're going to do it over those 2 days. So somebody's going to have to go first after Posca, and then somebody will go later in the next week. But anyway, I'll send that out. I will send out the doodle today because I know you guys want to plan that and get that under your calendar and get a sense of who's doing what. But I will send that out today. And then go Posca. So we'll see you. And stay safe. Hold out, Stan, and thumbs up. Take care. Love you. Bye-bye.